The sun of planet Threx 7 glowed pale purple, casting long shadows across the rocky village square. Alien girls stood in a long line, their heads held high, their tails raised with pride. Each one wore bright feathers, shining scales, or long, colorful horns. This was the choosing day, a day when male warriors would pick their breeding mates. But at the end of the line, one girl stood silently, trying not to be seen. Her name was Lyra. She was smaller than the others. Her skin was plain gray, not glowing like the others. Her feathers were short and dull, her horns barely visible. She kept her head down. She had been here last year, too. And the year before. No warrior had ever picked her, not even for a second look. "Look, it's her again," one girl whispered with a fake smile. "She still thinks someone will choose her." The others giggled, covering their mouths with sharp claws. Lyra's heart ached. She had tried so hard this year, used herbs to shine her skin, straightened her back, even starved herself to look thinner, but still. No one looked at her. One by one, the warriors walked along the line. They picked strong ones, tall ones, exotic ones. Each picked girl would raise her arms with joy. Her friends would cheer. Lyra didn't even look up anymore. She already knew. No one would stop in front of her. She wasn't a breeder, they said. She was broken, unfit, and too ugly. The last warrior passed by her and didn't even pause. Just like always, tears filled Lyra's eyes. But she blinked them away. Crying in public was another shame. She turned and walked behind the main hut, hiding near the waste barrels. The smell didn't bother her. She had sat there many times before. She hugged her knees, whispering to herself, "Why was I born like this? Why can't I be like them?" Suddenly, a soft crack echoed behind her. She froze. Was someone spying on her? A shadow fell across the ground near her feet. She slowly looked up and saw a strange creature leaning against the wall. Tall, 2 legs, no tail. Wearing brown armor with a bleeding cut on his forehead. It was a human. She gasped and stood up quickly, ready to run. Her people called humans wild, dangerous, and disgusting breeders. And now one was here, standing silently just a few steps away. But he didn't attack. He looked tired, maybe hurt. Then, to her shock, the human looked straight at her and smiled. "You look beautiful," he said softly. Lyra blinked, stunned. "What?" whispered, not believing her ears. "I said," the human repeated, still breathing heavy, "you're beautiful." His voice was calm, honest, not like the mocking voices of her people. Lyra's hands shook. Was this a trick? A joke? No one had ever called her beautiful, not even her own mother. "You must be confused," she said quietly. "I'm not like the others." She motioned toward her plain body, her short feathers, her dull gray skin. The human looked confused. "Not like the others? You mean the peacocks out there?" He chuckled, then winced from pain. "I've seen many things in the galaxy," he said, "but you," he paused, "you have kind eyes, calm strength, and something I can't explain." Lyra stared at him, her heart beating faster. No one had ever looked at her like this. The human slowly sat down beside the barrel. He groaned as he held his injured arm. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you," he said. "I just needed a place to hide." Lyra didn't speak for a moment. Her people would punish her for even talking to him, but she didn't move. Away, instead, she looked at him again. He was nothing like the stories. He looked human, yes, but also gentle, curious, and respectful. She whispered, "Are you running from someone?" He nodded. "Yes, alien guards. I crashed near here. I was looking for shelter." Lyra looked around. No one had seen him yet. Her heart beat fast. If she helped him, she would be in danger. But if she left him, he might die. And deep inside, a strange new voice said, He called you beautiful. No one ever did that before. She made a decision. Follow me, she whispered. I'll hide you. The human's eyes widened. Really? Lyra nodded, but quietly. No one must see you. She led him through the back path, behind storage huts toward her family's old tool shed. It was dusty and broken, but safe. As they entered, she closed the door behind him. The human smiled again. Thank you. Lyra turned away. Not wanting him to see her blush, she wasn't chosen by her own people, but maybe, just maybe, she had been seen by someone else, and for the first time. That felt more important than being breeding material. Lyra stood at the door of the small shed, her heart beating fast. Inside, the human sat quietly on the floor, looking around at the dusty tools and broken crates. He had taken off his outer jacket, revealing his injured arm, wrapped with a dirty piece of cloth. She had no idea why she brought him here, but she knew one thing when he said she was beautiful. Something changed inside her. Now she didn't feel like nothing. She felt seen. The human looked up at her and smiled again. You're very kind, he said. I didn't expect kindness here. Lyra didn't know what to say. No one's ever called me kind before, she whispered. He raised an eyebrow. Really? She nodded. Not kind, not beautiful, not anything. The human's smile faded. I'm Rain, he said. Just a technician, not a soldier. Lyra. She replied softly. It felt strange, sharing her name with a human, but his voice was calm, not angry, not loud, just human. She sat down across from him, still keeping a little space. You're supposed to be a monster, she said suddenly, looking at him closely. That's what they tell us. That humans force themselves on females, okay? That you smell bad. That your teeth are used to bite during mating. Rain stared at her for a second, then burst into laughter. Lyra blinked in surprise. Was he mocking her? But then he said, still laughing, that's the weirdest thing I've heard. No wonder everyone here looks at me like I'm a disease. He held his sides and winced. Ow, laughing hurts. But worth it. Lyra smiled a little, her first real smile in a long time. I'm serious, she said. They say humans are desperate to breed with anything that moves. Rain shrugged. Well, not anything. I mean, we do like company. But forcing someone? Tea? Paused, then looked at her again. When I said you were beautiful, I wasn't trying anything. I meant it. You looked sad, but strong. It made me stop. Lyra didn't look away this time. No one had ever said her sadness made her beautiful. They said sadness was weakness, a reason to be left out. She felt confused. His words were soft, but they hit deep. Outside, voices echoed in the distance. Guards, maybe, or villagers returning from the square. Lyra stood up quickly and checked through a small crack in the wooden wall. Stay down, she whispered. If they find you, they'll hurt you or worse. Rain obeyed without question. He sat lower and pulled a sack over his body, hiding his form. She turned back to him. You need food, she said. I'll try to bring something later. He nodded. Thank you, Lyra. As she opened the door slightly to leave, he said one more thing. Your name suits you. You know. She looked back. Why? In our language, it sounds like light, he said. And you feel like a small light in a very dark place. Lyra stepped outside, her chest tight with emotions. The sky above was darker now, stars beginning to show as she walked through the shadows of her village. She realized something. In all her life, no one had ever said her name with such warmth. Later that night, she returned with a small box of breadfruit and a bottle of water. She waited until everyone was asleep, then quietly slipped into the shed. Rain sat up with a grin. I thought you wouldn't come back. I almost didn't, she said, placing the food near him. But I wanted to. They ate in silence for a while. Then Rain spoke again. Back home, I worked on ships. Fixing engines, adjusting shields, he smiled proudly. I wasn't important. But I was good at what I did. Lyra listened carefully. No one had ever shared personal stories with her before, not even her own family, who were always ashamed of her birth flaws. She finally asked, "Why were you on this planet?" Rain looked down. Our ship was on patrol. Something hit us. I escaped in a pod and landed near here. He sighed. I don't even know if anyone else survived. Lyra's hand slowly moved closer, but she didn't touch him. I'm sorry, she said. Rain looked at her, and for the first time, there was no smile, only tired honesty. Me too, he whispered. But I'm glad I met you. Lyra felt something in her chest, fear, excitement, warmth. She didn't know what to call it. But one thing was clear. This human didn't see her as broken. He didn't judge her body, her feathers, or her voice. He only saw her. And in that small moment, in a broken old shed, a bond formed, quiet and fragile, but real. She didn't know what would happen tomorrow, or if the guards would find him, but for now, she felt seen, safe, and strangely alive. The night was silent on Threk 7, but inside Lyra's heart, a storm was rising. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Rain's face, tired, hurt, and still smiling at her like she was someone important, like she mattered. Why? Would a human care about her? Why would he say such kind things when no one else ever did? The next morning, Lyra quietly left her sleeping chamber, careful not to wake her caretaker. She moved through the back alleys of the village, avoiding the main paths. The shed where she hid Rain was still there, untouched, hidden behind old tool crates and junk. She knocked twice, then once more. Just like they had agreed, the door creaked open, and Rain peeked out, his face lighting up when he saw her. You came back, he said with relief. You didn't die, she said with a smile. That's something, he laughed, even though his side still hurt. She stepped inside, handing him a small pouch of dried roots and a wrapped cloth with healing paste. I stole this from the medicine tent, she whispered. Use it on your arm. He blinked. Surprised? You stole? For me? I didn't think, she replied. I just did it. Rain looked into her eyes, serious now. Why? He asked softly. Why would you save me, Lyra? She froze at the question. No one had ever asked her why she did something, only told her what she did wrong. She sat on the floor beside him, avoiding his eyes. I don't know, she whispered. Maybe because you're the only one who ever saw me as more than a mistake. Rain didn't speak for a moment. Then he gently said, where I'm from. Being different isn't a curse. What makes you valuable? Lyra's eyes watered, but she quickly wiped them. I don't feel valuable, she said. Not here. Rain reached into his pocket and pulled out a small round object. It was dirty, cracked, and looked like a coin. This is my mother's badge, he said. She was a maintenance leader on a big space station. She used to say, fixing something that's broken takes more courage than building something new. He placed the badge gently in her hand. I think you've got that courage. He added, even if you don't see it yet. Lyra held the badge tightly, not knowing what to say. In her culture, girls like her were meant to serve in silence or be forgotten entirely. But this human, this lost, hurt stranger, had just called her brave. They spent the next hour talking quietly. Rain told her about Earth, about blue skies, oceans, and cities filled with strange sounds. Lyra told him about Threk 7, how the strong ruled and the weak were tossed aside. Their worlds were nothing alike but their pain, their loneliness. That was the same. Suddenly, a sound outside broke their peace. Footsteps, loud and heavy. Approaching fast, Lyra's eyes widened. Someone's coming. Rain grabbed a wrench from the floor and limped to the side, but there was nowhere to hide. In time, Lyra rushed to the door and peeked outside. Her heart sank it with Sinra, one of the popular girls from Choosing Day, and she was walking toward the shed with 2 guards behind her. "She saw me yesterday," Lyra whispered in panic. "She must have followed me." Rain looked at her. "Go, save yourself." "No," she hissed. "They'll kill you." The door banged loudly. "Lyra, we know you're in there." Sienra's voice shouted, full of cruel joy. "We saw your footprints. Come out with the human." Rain stepped forward, ready to surrender, but Lyra blocked him, her whole body trembling. "No," she said firmly. "I won't let them take you." She looked around quickly and grabbed an old piece of metal from the corner. Behind the shed, there was a loose wooden panel that opened into a back path. She pointed to it. "Go now, through there." "I'll distract them." Rain's eyes widened. "They'll hurt you." "I don't care," she said. "Just go." He hesitated for a heartbeat, then grabbed her hand. "I'll come back for you, Lyra," he said. "I promise." She didn't speak, only gave a small nod as he slipped through the back opening, disappearing into the fog. Moments later, she opened the front door just as the guards were about to break it down. "There is no human here," she said, her voice steady. Sinra stepped forward, looking smug. "Liar. I saw you talking to him." "I talked to myself," Lyra replied coldly. Because no one else does, the guards pushed past her, searching the shed, but Rain was gone. Sinra narrowed her eyes. "We'll be watching you," she warned. "You should have stayed invisible like always." The guards left, but Lyra stood still in the doorway, her heart pounding. She had lied. She had protected a human, and now she was a traitor to her own people. But strangely, she didn't regret it, because for the first time in her life, someone had promised to come back for her. And that promise felt like more than anything she had ever known. The next morning, the village of Threk 7 felt different. The wind was sharp, and the sky was cloudy with yellow clouds. Birds didn't sing, and people whispered instead of laughing. Lyra knew why. Her secret was no longer safe. The guards had returned, checking every hut, asking questions. They knocked on doors, lifted floorboards, sniffed the air for human scent, and everywhere Lyra went, she could feel eyes watching her. Even the younglings stopped playing when she passed. Mothers pulled them away and whispered, "Stay away from her. She's touched by the outsider." Lyra kept her head down, her chest tight with fear, but she didn't regret it. Rain had escaped. That was all that mattered, or so she thought, by the time evening came. 2 guards showed up at her door. One was tall and cold-eyed, the other short and cruel. "You will come with us," the tall one said. "No questions," added the short one. She didn't resist. She knew this would happen. Still, her legs trembled as they dragged her toward the center tower. The council chamber was made of dark stone, round and cold. 7 elders sat in high seats, their long robes dragging on the floor. In front of them, Lyra stood alone. The tall elder, called Grand Master Selek, spoke first. "Lyra, of the low-born line, you are accused of harboring a human enemy." He didn't ask, he stated it. Lyra didn't answer. Her silence echoed in the chamber. Another elder leaned forward. "This isn't the first time you failed your people," he sneered. "You were not chosen for breeding 3 cycles in a row. You are already a failure to your kind." Lyra's fingers curled tightly, but she said nothing. She knew the real reason they hated her wasn't just the human. It was because she had never fit their idea of perfection. Then a voice came from the side of the room. "She's lying. I saw her feeding him." It was Sinra, stepping out from behind a pillar with a fake, innocent look. "She even brought him medicine," she added sweetly. "Maybe she wants a half-human baby." Gasps filled the chamber. Lyra felt her face burn. Not from shame, but from rage. She stepped forward, her voice calm, but strong. "Yes, I helped him," she said. "Yes, I hit him. And no, I don't regret it. The council fell silent. Even Sinra blinked in shock, not expecting such boldness. Grandmaster Selig's voice turned sharp. You admit to the crime? Admit to the kindness, Lyra said. The only kindness I have ever shown or received in this place. The room grew tense. One elder whispered, She's corrupted. Unfit for society, she must be sterilized, said another. Exiled to the outer zones. Said the third. Lyra stood still. Her heart pounded, but her chin stayed high. If this was how her people treated kindness, then maybe she didn't. Want to belong anymore? The guards grabbed her arms and began dragging her out. As she passed Sinra, the girl smirked. Next time, try being pretty, she whispered. It would hurt less. They threw Lyra into a cold stone room underground, chains wrapped around her wrists. A metal door locked behind her with a loud clang. She sat there in the dark, alone, but her thoughts were not weak. They were on fire. She remembered Rain's words, I'll come back for you. Was it a lie? Just something to make her feel better. She didn't know, but a small voice inside her hoped he meant it. That night, the village slept peacefully. But in the forest beyond, something moved. A shadow slid between trees, silent as wind. A figure, wearing human armor, with bandages on his side. Rain, tired but determined, had returned. He had found old HFY 7 maps in a crashed outpost nearby. He followed them to the village walls. His tech was low, but his mind was sharp. He watched from the cliff and whispered, Hang on, Lyra. I'm coming, back in the cell. Lyra sat with her back against the wall. She looked at her hands, small, scarred, and shaking. Her people said she was unfit. But Rain said she was strong. Her people said she was useless, but Rain had trusted her with his life. She closed her eyes and whispered, I don't know who I really am, but I'll find out, even if it meant breaking every rule they forced on her, because now, the secret wasn't just out, it was alive. It had awakened. Something new in her. Something no one could chain. Midnight on HFY 7 was cold, quiet, and watched by 1,000 blinking stars. The guards near the outer walls of the village were sleepy, leaning on their spears. They didn't expect trouble, not here. Not now, but trouble had already arrived. It moved like a shadow, silent and careful. Rain was back. His body ached with every step. The bruises on his ribs hadn't healed, and his side still burned. But he didn't care. He had made a promise to Lyra, and he wasn't going to break it. He hid behind broken walls and crates. Avoiding the light from watchtowers, his eyes searched the village for one thing: the tower prison. He had seen it once from a hilltop, dark and tall, like a finger pointed at the stars. Now it stood before him, guarded by 2 alien soldiers. Rain whispered to himself, Okay, Rain, you've broken into harder places. He pulled a small device from his belt, a pocket EMP, damaged but still working. He tossed it gently toward the guards. Pop! The device sparked, letting out a flash of blue light. The guards jumped and looked around in confusion. There comes, fizzled out. Rain used the moment. He dashed from the side and knocked one guard off balance with a metal pipe. The second guard tried to strike back, but Rain ducked, kicked his knee, and hit him on the back. Both fell to the ground with groans. Not dead, just stunned, Rain moved quickly, dragging their bodies into the shadows. He found a key card on one of their belts and rushed toward the prison door. He tapped the panel, clicked. The door opened with a hiss. The hallway inside was narrow, and cold stone walls, dripping pipes, and flickering lights. Lyra, he whispered as he moved. Please be here. He checked cell after cell, empty, rusted, darkened, till he reached the last one. Inside, sitting against the far wall, was the girl who had saved him. Her head was down, her arms chained, her feathers dull and messy, her clothes torn. But when she heard the door creak, she looked up, her eyes widened in disbelief. Rain. she whispered. He smiled, almost breathless. Hey, he said. Told you I'd come back. Lyra stood slowly, her legs shaking. You really came, she said, her voice breaking. Rain stepped in and cut her chains with a plasma tool. She fell into his arms, weak but holding on to him like he was real. Because he was. No one's ever come for me, she whispered. No one. Well, Rain said, helping her stand. They clearly have bad taste. Lyra laughed softly through her tears. But their moment didn't last. Alarms suddenly blared. Red lights flashing above them, Rain cursed. They found the guards outside, time to go. They ran through the hallway, Lyra leaning on him for support at the exit. More guards were already arriving. Rain quickly locked the door behind them. Buying a few seconds, we can't go back the way I came. He said, they'll be waiting. There's an old sewer path behind the north wall, Lyra said. No one uses it anymore. They rushed toward the old sewer grate, dodging shadows and jumping fences. Rain used his tools to cut the lock. Together, they slipped into the tunnel, dark, wet, and full of rusted pipes inside the tunnel. The sound of the alarm was muffled. The only sound now was their breathing and splashes as they moved. After minutes of walking, Rain stopped. Let's rest here, he said, helping her sit on a dry stone. He handed her a small pack of food and water. Lyra took it silently, her hands still shaking. I thought I'd never see you again, she whispered. I thought I'd die forgotten. Rain looked at her, serious. Lyra, I don't care what your people said. He said, you saved me. You risked everything. You're more than they ever saw. Lyra looked into his eyes. For the first time, she believed he wasn't lying. But now you're in danger too, she said. They'll hunt you. And me, Rain smiled gently. Then let them come, he said, because now we're not alone. They sat together in the darkness. A girl who thought she was worthless, and a man who saw her as everything the galaxy needed, more of bravery, kindness, and heart. Outside, the entire village was in chaos. Guards searched every hut. Flying drones scanned the trees, but they were too late, because the human who wasn't supposed to care had broken in and taken the one they threw a Weenot as a prisoner, but as someone worth fighting for. The tunnel led to a wide cave hidden behind roots and moss. Rain helped Lyra sit down near a stone wall. She looked exhausted, her legs barely holding her up anymore. They had escaped the prison, escaped the guards, but now they were fugitives. The silence in the cave was peaceful. It was the first time they weren't running or hiding, and yet both of them felt something even more confusing. A quiet closeness neither had known before. Lyra leaned against the wall and let her head rest back. Her eyes slowly moved toward Rain. His armor was scratched, his arms still wrapped in bandages, but to her, he looked strong, calm, and quiet. And safe. You really came for me, she whispered again. Rain smiled gently. Of course I did. She looked away, unsure how to speak the words forming inside her. I've always been told I'm useless, she said, her voice soft. Not fit to be chosen, not strong enough to serve, not pretty enough to breed. Rain tilted his head. That's what your people believe. Lyra nodded slowly. They measure beauty by shine, color, and tail feathers. She said with a bitter laugh, I never had those. So they called me leftover. Rain moved closer, just a little. He looked at her face, not her feathers, not her scars, her. Where I come from, he said quietly. Beauty is more than what shines. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small cracked mirror, the last piece he had from his escape pod. Here, he said, handing it to her. Take a look again. Lyra hesitated, then slowly lifted the mirror. She saw her own reflection, same dull eyes, same plain features at first, but then she noticed something new. Her eyes looked stronger. Her cheeks had a faint glow. Her lips curved slightly, not in sadness, but peace. Rain's voice broke the silence. "Beauty is kindness when no one's looking," he said. "It's bravery in fear, truth in pain, and it's you." Lyra lowered the mirror slowly, her hands trembling. "No one has ever said things like this to me." She said, "That's because they were blind," Rain replied. "And I'm not." The cave grew warmer as a fire began in the small corner Rain had built. He had used old scraps and heat packs to create light and warmth. Lyra moved closer, wrapping herself in a thin cloth. Rain took out a small scanner from his belt and adjusted it. A faint glow lit the walls, revealing faded drawings, old Threx markings. "Signs of a time before the choosing system. Look," he said, pointing to one symbol. "It means balance." "And that one means harmony," Lyra added. Surprised, "My grandmother once told me about these." Before she was taken away, they sat together, reading old meanings, forgotten values. And in the soft glow of the fire, their hands touched, accidentally at first, then slowly, deliberately. Lyra looked at him, her heart thudding. "Do you really mean everything you've said?" Rain nodded. "I wouldn't risk my life for a lie." He gently reached out and touched her cheek. It wasn't rushed or forceful, it was gentle, warm and real. "You are beautiful," he said, "not because of your feathers, not because of your size or shine, but because you choose to help. When others walk away, because you risked your life for someone like me." Lyra closed her eyes, holding back tears. "I thought I'd die in that cell," she whispered, "and no one would remember me. But I did," he replied, "and I will." She leaned forward and rested her head against his chest. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just let her be still, for the first time in her life. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't wishing to be someone else. She was just Lyra, and to Rain. That was enough. The fire crackled beside them. Outside, the wind howled, but inside that cave, two hearts, one alien, one human, sat together in peace. They had both been broken in different ways, but here, in the darkness, they had found something. Neither expected healing, hope, and something very close to love. Far away, drones flew across the sky. The elders sent scouts to search the forests, but their systems couldn't scan emotion, couldn't track loyalty, and they didn't understand one thing: you can cage a body, but not a soul that has finally been seen. Lyra didn't care what they said anymore, because now she knew what was truly beautiful, and she had become it. The sky over Threx 7 burned red. Drones circled in the air, and soldiers marched through the trees. The council had declared Lyra a traitor, and the human with her a dangerous enemy. They sent tracking beasts, scanners, and flyers to hunt them down. But Lyra was no longer the quiet, scared girl who waited to be chosen. She had already chosen herself. In the hidden cave, Rain worked fast. He fixed his signal beacon using scrap tech from old mines nearby. "We have one chance," he said. "If this signal reaches my people, they'll send a rescue ship." Lyra nodded, her eyes focused. She helped him place power cells and adjust frequencies. "Will they really come?" she asked. Rain smiled. "They always come for their own." Lyra looked out the cave entrance. Wind blew through the trees, and shadows danced under the moon. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but purpose. This was her land, but for the first time she wanted to leave it, not to run but to grow suddenly. A distant screech echoed through the forest. "Scanners," she said quickly. "They're getting close." Rain checked the beacon. "It needs 10 more minutes to charge," he said. "Then we launched the flare." Lyra stood, breathing deep. "I'll buy you time," she said. Rain looked up in alarm. "No, Lyra. If they catch you, they won't," she cut in. "I know these paths. I know how to distract them." She walked to the edge of the cave and turned. "You said I was brave," she said. "It's time I believe it too." Before Rain could stop her, she vanished into the trees. The forest was thick and alive with alien light. Lyra ran through the shadows. Throwing noise pellets and heat pads in different directions, she lured the scouts away from the cave, led them toward the old hunting grounds. Guards followed the signals, thinking they had cornered their prey. But all they found was empty ground and fake footprints. Above them, Lyra sat in a tree, watching. Her eyes were sharp, her body steady. She had never been trained, but survival had always been her life, and tonight, it became her weapon. Back at the cave, the beacon beeped. Rain launched the flare, a sharp, bright blue line shot into the sky. It cut through clouds like a sword. Somewhere above the planet's orbit, a human patrol ship picked up the signal. They locked on, turned the engines, and dove toward the surface. The flare alerted the alien council. More soldiers rushed toward the forest, but now it was too late. Lyra returned to the cave, sweating and breathless. "They're on their way," Rain said, holding her hand. "They're really coming." Lyra smiled through the pain. "Good," she whispered, "because I don't want to die in this place." Moments later, the air shook with a thunderous roar. A human dropship broke through the clouds and hovered above them. Steel ropes dropped down, and soldiers in black armor descended. Rain waved, and they pulled both of them up into safety. As the dropship rose higher, Lyra looked down at the forest. She saw the guards shouting below, powerless to stop them. And for the first time, she felt free on the human ship. Doctors treated Rain's wounds. They offered Lyra food, clean clothes, and a bed, but she sat by the window, staring at the stars. One officer asked her, "What were you doing down there?" Lyra answered quietly, "Just trying to matter." The officer smiled. "Well, you do now. We've seen your records. You saved a human life, escaped enemy territory, and outsmarted their army. You're more than breeding material, Lyra." He added, "You're a hero." Her eyes widened, tears forming. She had waited her whole life to hear that. And now it came from a world she didn't even belong to yet somehow. She did. Weeks later, Lyra stood on a balcony of a human space station. Rain stood beside her, his arm now healed. They looked out over the stars, so many lights, so many places to go. "You ready to start a new life?" Rain asked. Lyra nodded. "I don't know what's ahead," she said, "but I know what I'm leaving behind." He smiled and held her hand. "Good," he said, "because from now on, you don't have to prove anything. You're not a leftover, or a failure, or something broken. You're just Lyra." She squeezed his hand gently, and for the first time ever, that was more than enough.